Hey, what's up, guys? I just did my Golgari Infect deck tech. Um, I went and played a modern tournament this past weekend. It was a store championship, so you have the ability to win Flame Slash, which you get just for entering, Foil Archmage's Charm, which you get for getting top 8, or if you win, you got a Dark Confidant, excuse me. They're all really nice looking. Obviously, Flame Slash is not that great of a modern card, but whatever. I mean, it's something for everybody who plays. I just wanted to kind of share my experience with it. I had a lot of fun. I always enjoy it. Modern's my favorite format. I do miss, and I'll probably do some sort of video on this, but I do miss Modern before Modern Horizons 1 and 2. Curious what you guys think about that. I definitely would like to do a video on that because I feel like there's a good amount of people that miss the old days. Just a lot of power creep in the past two Modern Horizon sets, and every time they print stuff in, there's a whole bunch of issues because of the high power level of cards. But enough of that. So, Golgari Infect is something that surprises a lot of people. If it doesn't surprise people, I don't think it does as well. I don't get to play every week as I'd like to, but I have kids and a wife and a job, so they take a lot out of me. But when I do get to go play, I did bring my son. He played a red-white Obosh burn deck. He did all right. He had a lot of fun. So here's what I played. I played Golgari Infect versus Burn, and I believe it was a Boros burn deck. It was pretty fun. They won the die roll. I kept a hand with like Glistener Elf, Phyrexian Crusader, and some lands. And they started off pretty fast with like a Soulscar Mage. Then I played a Glistener Elf. Then they Searing Blazed my Glistener Elf, so I took damage. And then they did a little bit of burn damage and a little bit of attacking. And I just tried to hold off as long as I could. I believe I had a Fatal Push. I think I was able to kill the Soulscar Mage so they couldn't get the Prowess triggers and damage in. And I ended up being able to take the game with just getting the Crusader down. Because once the Crusader was in play, all I had to do was survive a turn because I had pump spells in hand. And there was no way for them to remove the Phyrexian Crusader. 2/2 Infect, First Strike, protection from red and white is just a beating for that type of deck. So I played that, and then the kid was just like, yeah, okay. He's like, I'd like you not to get that. What do I bring in to fight the Phyrexian Crusader? So the second game, they did bring in Deflecting Palms, but they didn't see any of them. They didn't tell me that, obviously. I asked after the game. Again, it was pretty much running back the same thing that had happened. They had a few more creatures in this game, but that actually was kind of an undoing, and I believe they kept a one-lander and took them a little while to draw into the lands they needed, and I was hitting my lands. I didn't have a Phyrexian Crusader in the opener, but I did draw into one, I believe. I was able to play it, and then rinse and repeat from what happened in the last round. That was pretty fun. I always like beating Burn. In the past, Burn's been a really bad matchup for me, but I have to say every tournament I've gone and that I've played Infect, which I've gone to a few, Burn's actually one of my better matchups. One, because my buddy has a Burn deck, so I've actually played against that a lot. And two, because Phyrexian Crusader, if you can get Crusader down before you're dead, especially if you can win the die roll, but even not. Sometimes I've had one tournament I went to where a guy, I beat him with a Phyrexian Crusader. He was like had me down to 3 life at the end of the game. But in the second game, he was so shook up by the Phyrexian Crusader getting in for all that damage that he forgot to attack the first turn when he played his Goblin Guide. And then he forgot to attack the second turn with his Goblin Guide and Swift Spear, and he was just so razzled. I'd never seen anybody get that razzled. That was a separate tournament, but that's the kind of effect the Crusader has on people who are not ready for it. Round 2, I played what's the name of that card? The Creativity deck. So we're playing, he kept drawing lands, I got a Crusader down, I was beating on him, and then he managed to Creativity a Clue token, and so I almost scooped. I actually reached for my cards and was like, all right, and then I said, wait a minute, I need to be smart about this, I need to see his deck, because I thought it was a Serra's Emissary deck, but to my surprise, it was not a Serra's Emissary deck, it was actually a Primetime deck. So he plays Primetime, and I'm just like, oh, I'm not dead at all. Because if he had chose Creature with Serra's Emissary, the game is just over. I can never get any damage in. But because he didn't have Serra's Emissary, and he was a Primetime deck, he was able to kill my Crusader with land triggers off of the, he was playing Valakut, the Molten Pinnacle, so he was able to kill my Phyrexian Crusader, but I had Inkmoth Nexus, where I was able to activate it on the following turn. He had no way to get around it, no fetches or anything like that he could use, and I was just able to chip in for that last little bit of damage. So then we sideboarded. We had a really good game too. I mean, it went back and forth for a while. One big thing I did is I did try to protect an Ignoble Hierarch with the Vines of the Vastwood early on in the game, and I think I probably should have let it go, and I think that may have been able to let me win, because what ended up happening was again, I got Crusader down, and he didn't really have any good answers to deal with the Phyrexian Crusader, but I could never pump spell it. And I did have some removal in my hand, and I drew into some lands here and there, which you don't really want a lot of lands in fact. And so at one point early on, I tried to protect my Ignoble Hierarch because I figured that might be a really big deal with the Crusader. And so when that happened later on in the game, there were turns where I would go and I'd try to give like Might of Okrosa my creature, my Phyrexian Crusader, and then he remanded it. And then I'd go to cast it again, and then he would have, I can't remember the name of the card, Flusterstorm. And so then I didn't have enough mana to pay for all the Flusterstorms that got copied and stormed off. And so then I'd lose my spell. And then I missed out on that attack trigger. I only got it in for 2. I also had to play around a 0/3 Crab because of that card that makes a Crab and a Clue. Those are really good blockers against Phyrexian Crusader because it usually takes about 2 turns if you can't pump it up to actually get rid of the creature. And he was able to do that Flusterstorm remand trick twice to me in that game, and that was enough to take me down because he just got to the point where he finally got where he could creativity, he got multiple Titans, and he just hit me for so much Valakut triggers. It was terrible. It was a really fun game though. So I lost that one, and then the second game he just trounced me. I had Abrupt Decay, I think I had a couple of creatures and a lot of lands, and I was like, well, if I draw into the right things, I was able to play like the Ignoble Hierarch into Plague Stinger, and I think I had an Inkmoth Nexus, but then I just kept drawing lands, and he just was able to get what he needed to get to. And as soon as he gets to 2 targets with his creativity, the game's pretty much over. So he took that down. He was my first loss. I was actually the only person that even got a win over him at the tournament, for what it's worth. So then the next game, I believe game 3, I played against Blue-White Hammer Time, and he missed a bunch of his triggers on his, what's that thing called? The Sentinel, that's white. It's new for Modern Horizons 2. Can't remember the name off the top of my head, but he missed his triggers when I played non-creature spells to ask me if I wanted to pay the 1. I'm not really sure if that's something technically where I'm supposed to remind him, but I believe in Modern, when you're playing with people, you don't have to remind them about their triggers. They're supposed to be responsible for those. But he missed those. I didn't really feel bad because he was playing a very I don't know, I think Hammer Time's close to tier 1, so I gotta take whatever advantages I can when people are missing them. So he played that turn 1. I played an Ignoble turn 1. He got Nurza's Saga. He played, I believe, a Stoneforge. And I think I had a Fatal Push. I was able to Fatal Push the Stoneforge Mystic, and so he couldn't play the free spells off of it. He did search up something weird. He was playing a weird Paradise Mantle, I think it is, that lets you pay 1 to cast it and 0 to equip, or maybe it's the opposite of that, so your creatures can tap for any color mana. That was a little bit weird. That's what he searched up, so I was afraid he had something more powerful in his hand. Basically, I was able to actually win the game. He made lots of tokens off the Urza Saga. He was able to look up for stuff like Shadow Spear and things of that nature, but because some of his creatures were white, I played some defense. I got a Phyrexian Crusader out. I was able to actually keep him from attacking for just long enough to get him for lethal swings. That one was kind of close. And then the second game, it was pretty fast. I just destroyed him. He kept a 1-lander, hoping that would work out. It didn't. I was able to hit all my land drops, hit my creatures, hit a Phyrexian Crusader, get in for all the damage I need to win. That was pretty good, cut and dry. I like playing against Hammer Time because I understand it. Hammer Time is very similar to Infect. When you look at the Infect deck, it's all about like loading up that one creature for that big punch. They're trying to put hammers on there and a couple other cheap artifacts, sometimes batter skulls, stuff like that they can cheat in. I'm just trying to get in there with my big Crusader or my little elves or my Ink Moth or my Plague Stingers. My last game, the fourth game, I sat down at the table. We both talked about, I was wearing a Dragon Ball GT shirt. We talked about Dragon Ball GT and Vegeta while we were shuffling up. We were ready to play. My opening hand was Pump Spells, Green Land, a Forest, a Fetch Land, and 2 Ignoble Hierarchs. I'm like, do I keep this? I don't know what I'm playing against. I mean, technically, Infect just needs creatures. I'd like to preface this conversation by saying I've never won a game of Infect with normal damage before. And so I was just like, well, maybe I'll draw into an Infector. Maybe I'll be able to get there. So I keep this weird hand. At the time, I didn't know this. He's playing Blue-Red Murktide. So he starts with a DRC. He takes a lot of damage without really knowing what I'm off of. He fetches, go gets a duel. So I actually thought he might have been on Death Shadow to begin with. I think he won the die roll. So then I played an Ignoble Hierarch. He chipped in for some damage on the next turn, played another land. He didn't try to remove my creature. He's like, I think you're playing Yawgmoth. So then I played my other land, fetched, got another Ignoble Hierarch, started actually attacking in for damage with the Ignoble Hierarchs. And then that kind of rinsed and repeated for a little bit. Tried to remove my Ignoble Hierarch during combat, because remember, he thought I was playing Yawgmoth. I was able to pump spell him, so I ended up getting in for something like 11 or 10 damage with the Ignoble Hierarch. So I'm sitting here thinking, man, I'm going to finally be able to get that first life total win with Golgari Infect. But, so he gets to the point where he finally plays a Murktide. He's got the DRC that isn't quite Delirium yet, so he doesn't have to attack with it every turn. And so now I got 2 Ignoble Hierarchs in, but he's got 2 blockers. One of them's a 5/5 Murktide, and I have him at 1 life. And I'm just like, man, I'm not going to be able to get this last 1 damage in. But at least I turned off of his fetch lands. Like, any more fetch lands he gets, he can't use. Which he did get them. So he was stuck on those. And so I ended up drawing into a Crusader the following turn. I slammed the Crusader down. And I figured, let's protect the Crusader time. Like, if he attacks with the Murktides, or if he gets into a situation where I can somehow attack with both Ignobles and get that 1 last damage in, sure, great. But he was playing very smart. He did get Delirium on the following turn. He played another DRC, and he had to attack with 1, but he still had the 2 blockers. So then I'm looking across. I had some sort of pump spell. I think it was a Might of Volcarosa. So I was like, well, I could flat out put the Might of Volcarosa on my Crusader, make it a big boy. He may not block, or he might not block knowing his dragon would die, and he had no Infect at the time. That was my thought process. So I said, instead, what we'll do is we'll attack. It'll become a 4/4 from the Ignoble Hierarchs. I don't have to spend anything on it to make it bigger. I don't have to waste my pump spells. See if he blocks. He did, because I did have 2 or 3 cards in hand at the time. Most of them, I think, were lands and the Might of Volcarosa. He blocks. Then we sit there, and he's like, okay, my guy gets hit, but your guy dies. And I'm like, no, because it's first strike Infect damage. Your guy's actually going to become a 1/1, and then he's going to hit my guy for 1 whole damage. And he's like, oh, I forgot about that. So his dragon lives, which means he gets another blocking phase, most likely. Next turn, I believe, because the DRCs had to attack, he was able to get me down pretty low in life. I think I was at 9 or something after attacks, because he really hadn't been able to get in for too much damage. But again, he was still stuck on the fact that he couldn't get rid of my Phyrexian Crusader. So the following turn, I was able to kill, I think I drew an Ink Moth Nexus, played that. I was able to kill his dragon, forcing him to block. And so then on the following turn, he had no real choice. There was nothing left for him he could do. He was out of lands that he could fetch. He had spells that he could cast, but nothing that could stop the Phyrexian Crusader, just because nothing could actually damage or remove the Crusader or do anything to it. So at that point, he just gave up and we moved on to the next game. The following game, it went on for a while, but it was pretty much the Phyrexian Crusader show. I mean, honestly, that's the big thing from Golgari Infect. Ignoble Hierarch plus Phyrexian Crusader, very nice. It is such a good combination, and I'm glad that's one card I'm pretty happy with that I've gotten from Modern Horizons too. There are good cards, very good cards in those sets that I'm happy to play with, but at the same time, looking back at old Modern, there was nothing wrong with Modern before the Modern Horizons sets. And then since then, it's just a way for Wizards of the Coast to sell a lot of packs, which I understand. They want to make money. They're a company. I don't blame them. I get it. There are some really fun cards to play with that are really neat, but it definitely warped our format. I had a lot of fun. I ended up going 3 wins, 1 loss. I was the only person to beat the undefeated player. I came in second, unfortunately, because he got no losses. So I didn't get the Sweet Dark Confidant, but I did get a really nice Archmage's Charm, and I did have a lot of fun. My son, he was playing. He didn't do so well. I think he came in 12th, but he did have a lot of fun playing. But yeah, that was my experience at the local store championship. Like I said, I'd like to do a video maybe talking about Modern Horizons sets and how they've warped the format. And I'd be curious to find out if people would like to see like a no Modern Horizons format, modern, where it's just the new stuff that's come in since then, because we have gotten a lot of powerful stuff. The other thing I think in the future we need to talk about is, with the ban list, how many cards do they need to just restart? How many cards like Jace the Mind Sculptor and Stoneforge Mystic could they just take off the ban list and they'd be fine? Maybe a tier 2, tier 3 at best. So yeah, that's all I got for today, guys. Hope you're having a good day. Hope you're staying safe. I'm praying for y'all. Have a great day, guys. Bye.